Hi there, I'm Makery Kate and I'm delighted to be working with sea salt again. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make your very own candles, but they're going to be with a difference because we're going to make them in seashells like this one here. I've got some scallop shells and some oyster shells. First of all, I've got some water heating up in a pan over here on this hob, and inside the pan I've put a metal cookie cutter, and that's because I'm going to pop my wax into this Pyrex bowl and pop it inside the pan, and the cookie cutter means that the bowl won't be touching the bottom of the pan, so it'll be a little bit protected from the heat. So we need to bring the water just to a simmering point. It doesn't need to boil, it just needs to be on a nice low simmer. And I'm going to pour my wax into the bowl here. I've got soy wax and it's in flakes, and I'm using 100 grams, which is probably a little bit more than I need, but you know, I'll just make lots more candles. Soy wax is brilliant for container candles, so that means candles which are held in a container rather than as a pillar. It's a really lovely smooth and soft wax and it melts really beautifully. Right, the water's come to a simmer now, so I'm going to turn it down slightly and just sit my bowl of wax inside the pan. Whilst the wax is melting, I'm just going to give you a few pointers on how to prepare the shells ready for the candles. So you need to make sure that the inside of the shells are nice and clean, so you need to wipe those down with a cloth. And then if the shells don't sit perfectly flat on your surface, you can get some polymer clay or a glue gun or something and just pop a couple of nodules underneath the shells just to make sure that they sit really nice and flat on your surface. You don't want them tipping over, especially when there's hot wax in them. The next job is to get your pre-waxed wicks and to stick those inside the shells. So I've done that for those ones here. All that's left is to do this last scallop shell. So I've got my glue dot here, which I'm just going to stick to the bottom of my pre-waxed wick and then stick that to the base of the inside of the shell. Some glues also work okay, you just need to be a little bit careful because with certain glue they may melt when the hot wax gets poured in. And then actually, usually you need to have like a wick holder, but because the wicks are so short with these, I think it's fine to just cut the wick and it should stand up nice and tall and vertically. Just make sure that you cut the wick to longer than what you're actually going to need it in the end. So we'll re-trim the wick once the candle has set. Okay, I'm going to lay all of my shells out in front of me. They're going to look so lovely. So like I say, I've got a mixture of scallop shells and oyster shells. Any shell will do as long as it's got a nice deep bowl. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the fragrance. So I've got a fragrance oil here, which is specifically made for candle making. I'm using sandalwood because I think it's a really lovely scent, but you can use whichever one you like. Now you need to make sure that you add the correct amount of fragrance oil to your wax. So with soy wax, it's quite low. It's about sort of 7% is the ideal amount of fragrance oil to your wax. Because I'm using 100 grams of soy wax, I'm going to be adding about 7 grams of the fragrance oil. So you can give the wax a stir every now and then. What we're looking for is for all of the flakes to be melted. So if you just give it a little help along and give it a stir with your metal spoon every now and then, it shouldn't take too long to melt. So the melting point of soy wax is about 50 degrees, but actually we're going to heat it up to about 70 degrees, and that makes sure that the fragrance oil will bond to the wax really, really well. Okay, let's take the first temperature reading and see how we're getting on. Okay, so the wax has reached 70 degrees now, so I'm going to turn the heat off and then carefully lift my bowl out and place it on a flat surface. I'm going to pop a tea towel down underneath just to make sure that it protects the surface and it doesn't wobble around at all. Okay, so now that the wax has melted and reached 70 degrees, I can add my fragrance oil. Once the fragrance has been added, you need to give it a really good stir for a couple of minutes to make sure that it's fully bonded with the wax. Oh, it smells amazing in here. We want to pour the wax when it's between 55 and 65 degrees for the optimum pour temperature. So I'm just going to check it again, see where we're up to. Okay, that is perfect. We're just under 60 degrees. So if you're using a jug, you can carefully pour the wax into your prepared shells, or you can use a ladle or a spoon to pour the wax in for you. I'm going to take a tea towel and carefully pour the wax from my bowl straight into the shells. There we go. I've poured all the wax into the shells now. Been really careful not to overfill them because you don't want any of the wax spilling over the edge. What you need to do now is just leave them where they are. So they need to be on a nice flat surface, out of a draft, away from a radiator, so kind of as an even temperature as you can find. And just leave them, and they should be dry really quite quickly because they're quite small. So I'd say within an hour you'd be able to move them. However, ideally you would like to leave them for about a week before you actually light them, and that means that the wax will be fully cured. I think these make absolutely brilliant gifts and just look really lovely dotted around your home as well. So they'll be lovely things to make for people to give. I purchased these seashells from Etsy online, but if you're lucky enough to live by the seaside, you may have a selection yourself that you've managed to beachcomb from your local beach. How lucky are you? Oh. I hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and if you make any seashell candles yourself, we would love to see them, so please make sure you tag Sea Salt. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.